Picture this. You're sitting at your kitchen table, laptop open, coffee getting cold next to you. It's a Tuesday night, nothing special about it. And for no particular reason, you open your banking app, the one you usually avoid because looking at it feels like looking directly into the sun. And then you see it, a number you've never seen before. $50,000, just sitting there. And for a second, you don't even react. You just blink, because your brain literally doesn't know what to do with that information. My name is Nico, and I spend way too much time thinking about money. If you're new here, this channel is where we dig into the real psychology behind financial decisions. Not just the math, but the stuff happening in your head that no one ever talks about. If that sounds like your kind of thing, hit subscribe and tap the thumbs up before we dive in, because today's video might genuinely change the way you think about money for the rest of your life. And I mean that. Because today we're talking about $50,000. Not as a finish line, not as some dream number that lives in a spreadsheet you made when you were optimistic in January. We're talking about $50,000 as a threshold, a psychological line in the sand where something fundamental shifts inside you, where your entire relationship with money changes at a cellular level, and most people don't even realize it's happening to them. Here's the thing though, most people never cross it, not because they don't earn enough, not because they're bad with money, but because of a trap so well disguised, so perfectly normalized by everyone around them that they walk right into it over and over again without ever knowing it exists. And by the end of this video, you're going to see that trap in full detail. You're going to understand exactly why the first $50,000 is the hardest money you will ever save, and why every dollar after it almost saves itself. Let me paint a picture. Imagine you're walking through the desert. No shade, no landmarks, just sand as far as you can see in every direction. Every decision you make, which way to walk, how fast, how much water to drink, is dominated by one single thought: survival. You're not thinking about the future. You're not thinking about building something. You're thinking about today. You're thinking about making it to the next hour. That is what it feels like to live paycheck to paycheck. That is scarcity mindset in its purest form. And the terrifying part, it doesn't care how much you earn. There's a book called Scarcity by behavioral economists Sendhil Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir, and the research in it is genuinely one of the most eye-opening things I've ever read. Their core finding is this: when people feel financially scarce, when they're constantly worried about not having enough, it literally reduces their cognitive bandwidth. It narrows their mental focus like tunnel vision. They become incredibly good at solving the immediate problem, paying this bill, getting through this week, but catastrophically bad at thinking about the long term. And here's the part that breaks my brain. This isn't a personality flaw. It's not a discipline problem. It's a predictable, measurable cognitive effect of financial stress. The scarcity itself creates the tunnel vision that makes it nearly impossible to escape the scarcity. So what does that look like in real life? It looks like making a minimum payment on a credit card because you can't afford the full balance, then watching interest eat up 3 times that amount over the next year. It looks like skipping a dental appointment because the copay stings, then paying for a root canal 6 months later. It looks like turning down a 401k match, free money, literally free money, because the take-home reduction feels like too much right now. Every single one of those decisions makes perfect sense in the moment. Every single one of them is actively making you poorer over time. And the cruel irony is that the stress of being behind financially is part of what keeps producing those exact decisions. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Because the $50,000 threshold doesn't just change your bank account, it changes your brain. And that is not hyperbole. When you cross that number, and the number isn't magic, I'll explain why 50,000 in a second, something in your psychological operating system quietly reboots. The tunnel vision starts to widen, the fog lifts just slightly, and for the first time you start making decisions from a completely different place, not from fear, from optionality. and those two things produce wildly different outcomes over a lifetime. Why 50,000 specifically? Because that number for most people in their 20s and 30s represents roughly 6 to 12 months of core living expenses. And when you have 6 to 12 months of expenses sitting in an account, your nervous system gets a signal it has never gotten before. It gets the signal that you are safe, that you are not one car repair away from disaster, that you could lose your job tomorrow and still have time to think clearly, to choose wisely, to move towards something rather than just running away from something. That feeling of safety is the foundation that every other good financial decision gets built on. Without it, you're still in the desert. With it, you're standing at the edge of an oasis, starting to plan. Think about the decisions you make when you feel safe versus when you feel desperate. When you feel desperate, you take the first job offer because you need income now, even if it pays 30% below market. When you feel safe, you negotiate. When you feel desperate, you ignore investing because the stock market feels like gambling and you can't afford to lose anything. When you feel safe, you understand that investing is how you stop trading time for money forever. When you feel desperate, you say yes to a car you can barely afford because the dealership offers you low monthly payments, and monthly payments feel manageable. When you feel safe, you do the math on total cost, on opportunity cost, on what that money compounding over 20 years actually represents. Completely different person, same income. The only variable is the cushion. Now, let me give you some real math here because the numbers on this are absolutely staggering. Let's talk about Marcus. Marcus is 26. He earns $62,000 a year. He's not doing badly, but he's not doing great either. He has about $300 left after expenses every month, and historically, he spent most of that on things that felt small in the moment. A nice dinner here, a new jacket there, a weekend trip he technically couldn't afford. He's not irresponsible, he's just living at the edge of what he earns, which is the default for most people his age. Marcus never builds the 50,000. In fact, Marcus never gets past about 8,000 in savings at any given time, because every time he gets close to something real, something happens, an unexpected expense, a vacation, a move, and the clock resets back to zero. At 35, he starts taking investing more seriously, but by then the compounding math is just slightly more painful. He ends up with a decent retirement, but he spent his entire 20s and early 30s in low-grade financial anxiety, never feeling like he had real options, never feeling like he could take real risks. And the opportunity cost of that in wealth, in career choices, and peace of mind is enormous. Now here's Jasmine. Same age, same income, same city. But Jasmine makes one decision that Marcus doesn't. At 24, after reading an article that scares her just enough, she gets obsessive about hitting 50,000. She cuts her lifestyle down to almost monk level for 18 months. It's not fun, it's actually kind of brutal. She says no to a lot of things. She watches the number grow slowly, then a little faster, then faster still. And then one Tuesday night, she opens her banking app and she sees $50,011. And her whole life quietly changes. Within 6 months, Jasmine negotiates a 12% raise at work because she can afford to walk away from a bad offer. She has leverage now and she knows it. She puts 15% of her income into a Roth IRA and a low-cost index fund because the money doesn't feel as precarious anymore. She takes a calculated career risk that Marcus never would have taken, a move to a smaller company with better growth potential and equity because she has a runway. She can absorb a few months of uncertainty. She can bet on herself. And here's the crazy part. By 35, even accounting for those 18 tight months where she basically lived like a college student again, Jasmine is building wealth at a rate that is fundamentally different from Marcus's. Not because she earned more, not because she was smarter, but because she crossed a threshold that changed how she made every subsequent decision. That's the compounding nobody talks about. Yes, $50,000 invested in your mid-20s can grow to several $100,000 by retirement. That math is real and you should absolutely care about it. But the bigger compounding effect is the one happening in your decision-making. Every good financial decision you make from a position of safety produces better outcomes than the same decision made from a position of fear. And those decisions stack, they multiply, they create a version of you 10 years from now that is completely unrecognizable from the version that never crossed the line. Here's where it gets into the really deep psychological stuff, because I think this is the part most finance channels skip entirely. When you don't have a financial cushion, money occupies this enormous amount of mental real estate. It's always there, humming in the background. You're at dinner with friends, and somewhere in the back of your mind, you're thinking about the bill. You're at work, and you're not fully focused on doing excellent work because a piece of your brain is quietly calculating whether you can cover rent if something goes wrong this month. You get an unexpected email, and before you even open it, there's a flash of dread. Is it expensive? Is something wrong? The cumulative cognitive cost of that constant background noise is something we almost never measure, but I'd argue it's one of the most expensive things you'll ever pay for. When that noise goes away, and it does go away, gradually as your cushion builds, something remarkable happens to the quality of your thinking. You become more creative at work. You take more initiative. You're more present in your relationships. You make better decisions because your brain isn't running in emergency mode 24 hours a day. The $50,000 doesn't just change your finances. It gives you back mental bandwidth you didn't even know you'd lost. But here's the trap, and I want to spend real time on this because this is where so many people get stuck, and they never understand why. There is a force working against you every single day, and it is well-funded, extremely sophisticated, and completely invisible. It is called lifestyle inflation, and it is the single biggest reason most people never cross the $50,000 threshold, even when their income is more than enough to do it. Here's how it works. You get a raise. Your income goes up by $400 a month. In a perfect world, that $400 goes toward building your cushion. But instead, something happens. Your standards quietly shift. Suddenly, the apartment you live in feels a little cramped now that you can technically afford more. The car you drive feels a little embarrassing now that your colleagues are driving nicer ones. The restaurants you used to love start feeling like you've outgrown them. You upgrade your phone. You start buying the name brand version of things. Every single one of these decisions feels completely reasonable. None of them feel like mistakes. And the net result is that despite earning more than you've ever earned in your life, you still have $300 left at the end of the month, just like when you were making less. This is so insidious because it disguises itself as success. Lifestyle inflation looks like winning. It feels like you're finally living the life you worked hard for. But what it's actually doing is keeping you in the desert. It's widening the gap between your income and your savings rate at precisely the pace that your income increases. It's a treadmill that gets faster every time you try harder. And the marketing industry, which is one of the most sophisticated psychological persuasion engines ever built, is designed specifically to ensure that this treadmill never stops. Every ad you see is designed to tell you that where you are right now isn't quite enough, that the person you admire, the life you want, the version of yourself you're reaching for, it's all available for a monthly payment. And here's the part that will blow your mind. Societal pressure on this is not neutral. It is actively working against your financial interests. Think about what we celebrate in our culture. We celebrate buying a house. We celebrate nice cars. We celebrate vacations and dining out and fashion and upgrading. We do not celebrate someone who says, I said no to a lot of things for 2 years and now I have $50,000 saved. There is no Instagram post for that. Nobody throws you a party. In fact, if anything, people will find quiet ways to make you feel like you're being boring or cheap or overly rigid. The behaviors that actually build wealth are deeply uncool in a culture that has been very deliberately designed to monetize your insecurity. So what do? Because I'm not going to sit here and tell you to live on rice and beans forever. That's not the answer either. The answer is awareness. The answer is understanding at a level deep enough that it actually changes your behavior, exactly what is happening and why. Because once you see the mechanism, once you understand how the treadmill works, it loses a significant amount of power over you. Here's the practical reality of building to 50,000. For most people earning a decent salary, getting there aggressively takes between 2 to 4 years. That sounds like a long time, but let me reframe it for you. 2 to 4 years of slightly tighter living in exchange for a lifetime of making financial decisions from a position of strength. 2 to 4 years in exchange for having the option to take the better job, to negotiate harder, to invest more consistently, to stop saying yes to things you don't actually want because you're afraid you can't afford to say no. That is an extraordinarily good trade.
The first 10,000 feels slow. It always does. You're fighting all the existing habits, all the existing subscriptions, all the existing social patterns. The second 10,000 feels a little faster because you've built some muscle memory. By the time you're at 30,000, something shifts again, and this is something almost nobody talks about. You start to feel the momentum. You check your account not with dread, but with genuine curiosity. The number going up starts to feel like a game you're winning rather than a punishment you're enduring. And then somewhere between 40 and 50,000, you start to feel it. That quiet, deep, almost unfamiliar sensation of being okay, of having room, of being someone who has options. And that is the identity shift I want to leave you with, because this is ultimately what this whole video is about. Before 50,000, your financial identity is reactive. You are responding to life as it happens to you. You are in survival mode, even if your survival is never actually threatened. You make decisions based on what you can afford this month, this week, this moment. You think of yourself, somewhere under all of it, as someone who doesn't quite have it together, someone who's always one bad month away from real trouble. And that identity, that quiet background belief about who you are, produces decisions consistent with itself. It keeps you exactly where you are. After 50,000, something changes at the identity level. You start thinking of yourself as someone who builds, someone who has discipline, someone who makes long-term decisions, someone who is not for sale to every marketing message that comes their way. And that identity also produces decisions consistent with itself. It compounds, it accelerates. You stop having to white-knuckle every financial decision because your identity as a saver and builder is now just part of who you are. You become the kind of person who doesn't panic when the market drops because you have a cushion and a long enough horizon to wait it out. You become the kind of person who looks at a spontaneous purchase and asks, not, can I afford this right now, but is this actually aligned with where I'm going? You become the kind of person who talks about money differently, not with shame, not with anxiety, but with clarity and intention. And the people around you will feel that. Your partner will feel it. Your kids, if you have them, will grow up watching it. That is the version of you that lives on the other side of the threshold. Here's the crazy part about all of this. The 50,000 doesn't change your income. It doesn't change the market. It doesn't change the economy or your job or any external variable. What it changes is you. It changes the operating system you're running. And a person running a growth mindset, safety-backed, options-aware operating system in a capitalist economy is playing a fundamentally different game than a person running on scarcity. Same world, same rules, radically different outcomes. So if you're sitting somewhere before that number right now, whether you're at 2,000 or 12,000 or 42,000, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not behind. You are not broken. You have not missed some window that will never open again. What you have is a target, a clear, actionable, psychologically transformative target. And every single dollar you add to that number is not just a dollar saved, it is a neuron rewiring. It is a decision pattern shifting. It is a version of you taking shape that makes better choices, has more options, and carries less of that quiet, exhausting, invisible weight of financial anxiety through their days. Start treating the 50,000 like the threshold it actually is, not a finish line, a launch pad. Get there as fast as you reasonably can without destroying your quality of life, because the other side of it is genuinely different. The math is real, the psychology is real, and the version of you that exists after crossing it is worth every single sacrifice you make to get there.
If this video helped shift something for you, please share it with someone you care about who needs to hear it. And if you want to go deeper on the psychology of financial milestones and the exact traps that keep most people stuck, I'm going to put a video right here that I think you need to watch next. I'll see you there.